Mark your calendars because this Friday, May 13th, Feminist Frequency is celebrating our 13th birthday with a spooky, horror-filled, all-day charity stream. Join us for 13 hours of thrills and chills with film critics, horror authors, and spooky streamers. That's Friday, May 13th, starting at 9 a.m. live on twitch.tv/femfreak.
The way he walks across the beach and through darkness and then just emerges into the light and says with the most smooth LA power player confidence you can imagine, hello dude, I'm Jackie Treehorn or whatever. The Coen brothers know how to make movies that make me want to do the Martin Scorsese or the Bong Joon-ho. To me it's cinema, quote, it's just
Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love. I'm Anita Sarkeesian, and today is our 200th episode. Can you believe it? So, of course, I've roped in two women who do not abide. Carolyn Petit.
Hey, I never said I don't abide. Who said I don't abide? Anyway, fine, I'll take it. I don't abide.
It's just roll with it. Ebony. Oh my goodness. And Ebony Adams. Here we go.
Yeah, clearly we abide. We're back. We're here.
That's true.
The abideth.
But don't you want to not abide as a role in life?
Yeah, that's why I left.
You know?
I was like, listen, I'm bringing this shit down. So I'm going to, it's time for this podcast to graduate into what it could be. And you were like, yeah, Ebony, I've been wondering how to get rid of your dumb ass.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
This is exactly what our conversations are like behind the scenes.
It was not Ebony being like, I don't have time for you anymore. No, it was
actually,
definitely...
Those were my exact words. Anita, I don't have time for you anymore. I do not abide.
Friends, I've missed you.
I missed you too. Although, y'all, I see Anita, not regularly, but, often enough. And clearly we still talk and stuff. But I never get to talk to Caro. And so, I'm just super excited about the podcast today. And then I won't talk to her again for another 6 months until Anita's like, hey, guess what? I need you
It's
to
another
come on
anniversary.
I need you to talk about this.
Well, everybody misses you all. Although I do have to say, Ebony suggested Kat, and I think Kat is fucking amazing. So I'm pretty stoked to have a stellar co-host that is better than all of us, maybe except for Carolyn. I feel like Carolyn's good. Anyways, but yeah, it's nice to have you back and to see your faces and talk about the movies and stuff. I feel like I was kind of shocked that 200 rolled around. How long have we been doing this for? 5 years, right? It's been in existence?
because say you do an episode every week, which we've taken hiatuses and things, but there's 52 weeks in a year. So that's if you listen to one episode a week, you basically have 4 years worth now of episodes of FFR, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Oh, so Carol left the podcast and went to math school, everybody.
That's right. I'm 200 divided by, do that, where's that math lady gif, the lady with the face and the triangles and all that shit.
I don't know what you were talking about, but I'm into it.
You don't know the math lady gif? Math lady gif doesn't conjure an image in your mind of woman deep in thought or confusion as triangles and shit hover in the air.
If you had said maybe confusion lady, that's the trigger word for me is confusion.
Yeah, I just made up the term math lady gif. Yeah. But in my mind, it's math lady gif. Anyway, Anita.
Last night I watched Eyes Wide Shut. Don't ask.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, no, and into it. I wish you'd invited me over.
You wouldn't have come anyways. Ebony doesn't leave her house.
I totally would have for that bonkers banana soup ass movie.
There's a scene where Nicole Kidman is doing math lessons with her kid, and it was if one man has $2.50 and the other one has $1.75, what man has more money? Or which one is more money? And I was like, wow, I'm so glad I'm not allowed near children because I can't
Anita had to pause the movie and get out some scratch paper and be like, I think I know. But no, listen.
That's what I took away from that movie.
Among other things, that bonkers movie, I love Sydney Pollack and have spent, the last week sort of digging myself into my obsession with like 70s paranoia movies, and it was kicked off by rewatching 3 Days of the Condor. Listen, maybe I'll talk about Sidney Pollack in the Freq Out section, because I just think like there are certain things that he does that no one does better. Anyway.
Great. I have COVID. Woo! So I have done nothing but watch movies. I've watched so many goddamn fucking movies. I don't feel like I ever want to watch a movie again, which is not true. But you know when you like are kind of stuck on your couch and not moving, and you're like, this is the worst thing ever. And I've like descended into low-key madness with my choices. So here we are. Why not watch The Big Lebowski?
The extras, the after party. It's been like a month and a half since I've been off the podcast. I no longer remember how any of it works, what the names are. Who are you?
All right, y'all. So The Big Lebowski by the Coen brothers has earned its cult classic status over the years. While not doing impressive box office numbers upon its release in 1998, fans have flocked to this film over the years via Big Lebowski-themed conferences and festivals, midnight screenings, live theater recreations, and even a religion, Dudism. The Big Lebowski, starring Jeff Bridges as the dude, follows a meandering, nearly incomprehensible mystery to get a rug replaced, to save a wife, to retrieve a car, and to win a bowling tournament. But, the film boasts an impressive cast with John Goodman, Julianne Moore, Steve Buscemi, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Tara Reid, John Turturro, and Sam Elliott. But most importantly, for today's show, The Big Lebowski is rated as the 200th top movie on the IMDb Top 250 movie list, which is not a questionable list at all. Let's do it.
Now, Anita, let's start here. You were not particularly excited about talking about The Big Lebowski because you said you don't like it, right? So
no, I'm not a fan of this movie.
Are you a fan of other Coen brothers movies? Or you just not like their jam at all?
Yeah, I'm not a huge Coen brothers fan, but I like can appreciate some of their films and what they do. I think The Big Lebowski feels to me like a movie that was made by and for teenage boys. And I think that it's a movie that like imprinted on a lot of people. Like we did an episode with Walter Chow who talked about sort of the biological imprinting of films, and I feel like my engagement with big fans of The Big Lebowski are that like it hits you at a very particular time in your life, and like you got really high and you watched it and it has all these quotable lines. But I've tried watching it a few times now, and I wasn't like mad about rewatching it because I was curious if I'd have a different perspective, but it's still like, I mean, I laughed. There are things in it that I can appreciate, but it's definitely not a movie for me.
That's interesting. So it comes out in 1998. I was in grad school at the time, so definitely not a teenager at that moment. And I wasn't in love with it the first time I saw it, but I have since really grown to love this movie, you know, and I'm always happy to rewatch it. But it's interesting that you talk about like the imprinting of a movie, because I do love when that happens, when a movie, for whatever reason, just sort of sinks into your gray matter. And then no matter what transpires afterwards, no matter, you know, what realizations you come to later on in life about, you know, the technical aspects of the film, the message of the film, whatever, it always kind of like the remnants, that mold is already there. But I would think that this would be a really frustrating for teenage viewers in some ways. Not that they're not smart, but I think there's so much going on that would have just like passed completely over their heads, not just like in the story, but the way that it's told. Because I mean, so much is like a harkening back to like noir tropes, right? Even though they're not immediately apparent, you know, and other forms of story. I don't know. I'm not making a lot of sense here, but.
Well, what's your relationship, Carolyn, to this movie?
This is only the second time I've seen it. I didn't see it right when it came out. I saw it some years later. I sort of had a detached admiration for it. And you know, I've just always been aware of it, of course, as the larger cultural phenomenon that it is, and that it's a film that some people really, really love. But I mean, I happened to see that we were looking for something thematically fitting some way to shoehorn the number 200 into the topic of today's episode. And I noticed that this was the 200th ranked film on the IMDb Top 250, where somehow The Shawshank Redemption has been like the number one film of all time for like forever, which is like ridiculous. I mean, whatever. That movie's like fine. But anyway, let's not talk. Let's not talk about The Shawshank Redemption.
That'll be the 300th episode.
Bye.
Yeah, well, sure. So, I have to say, so on this rewatch, very, very complicated feelings. Definitely aspects of it that I dislike or that I am critical of. But I guess, I do think that this is a film. So, there are those films that just seem to delight in being films and that have a kind of inherently cinematic, like, inventiveness and energy to them. And, for me, maybe Singin' in the Rain is like maybe the ultimate example of just a film that is pure cinema. Like it is top to bottom a movie. It couldn't exist in any other form. And it just exudes cinematic delight and energy. And The Big Lebowski for me was very pleasurable to watch as just a purely like cinematic experience. I think the Coen brothers in this movie, it feels just like a film that loves being a film. Like, so for instance, there's just so many moments in it, I think, that are kind of cinematically delightful. Like there's a moment where, the dude, to use his preferred nomenclature, like gets clobbered, and there's like this fireworks, effect when he gets clobbered, knocked out, and then next thing you know, like you're seeing the bluish lights of Los Angeles, like far down below, as he's like flying high above, and just that transition, that visually from the firework into that. The film is just filled with those kinds of like visual, visually like distinctive and kind of expressive little touches and details and moments. And so in that regard, just as like something that, it isn't just, the kind of film where, it's a camera pointed at characters talking to each other and doesn't, it's good. You can tell the Coen brothers are constantly kind of the type of filmmakers who are constantly asking themselves, like, how do we, like, harness, like, what's uniquely cinematic to kind of fuel, like, how this story looks and feels and how it plays out. Go ahead.
No, I think that there's an energy to this movie. Like every now and again you'll watch a movie and you're like, wow, it feels like they had a lot of fun making this movie. Right?
Yeah,
where you're just and whatever, making movies is hard, but I feel like there's just such a like spirit of like absurdness that everybody kind of understands. I find myself drawn to films where like an entire cast and crew understands exactly what is meaning to happen, and then it happens and it's all just like in sync. And I think that this movie, there's an appeal to it for that aspect of it. I like Jeff Bridges, I think, is extremely charismatic, and like that's another thing that I think really pulls you into this movie. Is he is just so hard to stop watching, right? You're just like so kind of engaged with him and what he's going through and his frustrations with everybody and his like desire to just be like this chill stoner dude, but like people are just like yanking his chain, like
there's something interesting about the way this film mythologizes the dude. I mean, it very explicitly mythologizes him in the sense of it plays with sort of the it has a kind of mythic Western quality to it via the Sam Elliott narration, right, where the dude is sort of situated as this like kind of mythic hero figure through the narration that kind of opens the film. But the dude is very much not, I mean, he is just a totally hapless kind of loser who at every step of the way in this film has no control whatsoever of what's going, over what's going on, has no idea what's going on, is constantly wrong about what is actually going on. Even his friend Walter kind of just constantly complicates things and makes things even worse for him. And so, you think of the typical, maybe the heroic like PI, or he's kind of thrust into a private eye role in this film. But rather than like all the pieces kind of adding up and there being some like really satisfying kind of conclusion at the end where he gets, where the PI, the male hero, quote unquote, solves things and is successful, vanquishes some evil force or some villain or what have you. Like, this is a story about people, and a central figure who are just being taken for a ride by life, like at every step of the way. And I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, exactly as you say, Carol. Like, the dude is the embodiment of the tumbling tumbleweed, that song that opens the film, right? He is not a driver of the plot in any way. He is ultimately reactive in every sense. And yet there is something so charming about the way that he lets things happen to him and offers the most like feckless sort of, response to people who either inadvertently or deliberately seek to, sabotage his just like living the life that he has set for himself, wearing a bathrobe, wearing like, comfy Zubas, writing checks for 69 cents so he can keep his white Russian habit. By the way, I'm having a white Russian this morning in honor of the Big Lebowski. And yeah, just this idea that, he's the dude. He's not Jeff Lebowski. He's the dude, the eponym. It's like he is a type of figure in the way that like Sam Elliott's character, the stranger, is a type of figure. Like no matter what Coen Brothers movie you're talking about, it's all ultimately character driven, right? Like characters welcome here, and that can be off-putting sometimes if the kind of like exaggerated, ludicrous, absurdity of a particular character doesn't slot into a groove that you find entertaining. It can throw off the whole thing, for you. But I think that's, that's a through line of their films. And you think about the film that immediately preceded this one, Fargo, right? Huge critical and commercial success. And then they follow it up with this, which no one quite knows what to do with at the time. And then after this is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Again, seeming to receive like a much more sort of like universal acclaim. I mean, for a long time, The Big Lebowski was seen as kind of an aberration in their work. But I think like, with the benefit of 25 years or whatever since it came out, it's since been recognized as like, oh no, this is very fully the kind of work they've always been doing.
I was reading.
Yeah,
no, go ahead. No, go ahead, Carolyn.
Okay. I mean, I was thinking about, of course, because this is Feminist Frequency Radio after all. I was thinking about the role of women in this film and how this is like in a lot of ways. Like you have Bunny Lebowski, right? Who is in a way is like reduced. There's an early scene where like the dude takes careful notice of her toes, right? Her and she asks him to like blow on her nail polish and all this. And anyway, it's almost in a way like she's kind of reduced to her toes in some regard, or like the toes become a kind of symbol of her throughout this film, more than she's like an actual person, right? But I mean, yes, like obviously this film very, very, very much primarily concerns men, almost entirely. But I mean, I do think there's something interesting about how these are men who, I mean, the big like stakes in their lives prior to these events are like the outcome of this bowling tournament, which they are so invested in. These are men who, again, like Walter, it just is like delusional about the world that he lives in, and it just reacts just completely out of proportion to literally everything all the time. So, I do think that there is a sense in which, like, aside, I do understand how the dude. I do think sometimes this world. I mean, I think it's interesting that this film is situated during the Gulf War, and it only makes very passing kind of mention of that, and yet it seems to think that that's important in the sense that in the early monologue, Sam Elliott makes a very, pointed mention of like the dude was the man for that time. Like he just fits right in there. And it's like, is it the sense of like, just the national, in what way did the Coen brothers mean that? Like, is it this larger narrative that's just completely constructed and false, and we as a country and as a people are all, in a sense, being taken for a ride, and so is the dude?
I think it's that, and also like it was a time of frustrated masculinity, right? And every single character in this film exemplifies that. Well, apart from Bunny and Julianne Moore's character, right? But there is not a single sympathetic character, like truly sympathetic character in this film, except perhaps for Donnie, who died. Poor Donnie, who dies and whose ashes get scattered on the wind, right? But everyone else, like, they are such figures of ridiculous manhood in this film. Exaggerated, puffed up with their own importance in some cases, obsequious and toadying in other instances, arrogant or, completely obsessed with, banal things to the exclusion of more important things, delusional. Like every single, man like in this film offers just like another horrible way of being a man.
Right. I mean, even the Big Lebowski of the title is fully constructed, like, a facade of a wealthy and powerful man, right?
Yeah.
As we sort of learn.
I think another thing that kind of dates this film is it's really offensive. Like, there's so many jokes, like really inappropriate jokes that I don't think would fly today, and you sort of brace a little bit for those, right? And they kind of keep going and going, and you're like, okay, like I'm not excusing it as of its time, but like it just feels like, as I've been watching a million fucking movies, you're just like, oh, there's a period of time in which like it was racy and cool and interesting and okay, quote unquote, to like make racist, sexist jokes or jokes about ability. And it was just a part of the like ways that stories were told. And I'm really glad that we like don't do that as much anymore, or there's not as much acceptance of it, but it is kind of a cost that we have to pay to engage with some of this stuff from this period of time.
Yeah, I have not seen it, but I know that John Turturro made
Jesus Saves.
Yeah, and which I think is on Netflix, maybe. And I thought that was so interesting because I recognize that like his character, the Jesus, like was depicted as this like, comic figure in the film, like someone that you could laugh at, right? As if his particular eccentricities were on par with the other sort of bad behaviors in the film. But I was like, no, this dude is, of an entirely different, like it's a different level of fucked upness. We're talking about a dude who's like, exposed himself to children. And so I remember thinking like, no, this is not the sort of thing that like you can just make a joke about and have this be, one more funny thing about the movie. This should land as solidly horrifying. And so the fact that then that character, has generated enough interest and enough like affection for John Turturro to then create Jesus Saves afterwards. I don't know, I always thought that was weird.
Well, also, isn't John Turturro Italian? and this character is like a really egregious Latinx stereotype.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to what you said, like that was very troubling, and again, feels like of its time. Like there's just little things about, you know, the joke about not the preferred nomenclature has become like a term, like a quotable thing, but it comes out of this extended joke about Asian American, or Chinese American, or Chinese in general, folks, and like it's not like it's not like it's a joke that where you're like, oh yeah, it was wrong to say that. It's like they just continued making the joke because it's a funny joke to make, quote unquote, right? Like it was those sorts of things here and there. Even something as even like, you know, Carolyn, you were talking about how Bunny is reduced to her toe, which there's a word for that. I mean,
yeah. Is it?
I mean, objectification. I don't know.
There's it's objectification. Yeah, some whatever. Anyways, but like just the fact that like the wife is, you know, like like she's like, I'll give you a blowjob for $1,000. Like I clearly married this guy for money, and you know, like she's a throwaway, and she's a stereotype, and like you know, Julianne Moore's character Maud, the fact that like. You know, she plays this eccentric, rich artist woman, which is fine. But then the fact that she's like tricking him into having a baby with her, you just like the women are all manipulative and shitty, and you know, out for their own gain in a way that like isn't equivalent or equitable or on par with the way that the men are shitty in this movie.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that some would say, well, that's the film riffing on noir types where women, yes, the women are, you know, either that, they are in some way dangerous or manipulative or what have you. That's not an excuse. That's just at all. It's just a thing that a way in which this film is like it's replicating an old pattern sort of self-consciously that is itself, you know, like can perhaps be used in ways that are self-reflective and critical and eye-opening, but that's, you know, I don't think that's
not what's happening.
You know what's interesting is that, and I don't know that this is accurate, but I read that Charlize Theron was originally intended for the role of Bunny, and I think about what her performance would have been like and what she would have brought to that role, and I wonder if the reason why she ultimately was not cast is because it would have made that linkage to noir a bit too clear. I think, you know, the way that an actor like Charlize Theron, who, God bless Tara Reid, but there's not a lot of like depth and nuance to this performance, right? Charlize Theron,
I mean, which probably is how it was, you know, I suspect that how it was directed as well. Like,
I mean, there's a difference between like the bubbly dunce character versus the hot seductress character.
Right. And
which
so
is
like
what
if
Charlize Theron would have been.
To me, my belief, which might be wrong, is that Charlize Theron would have been perfectly wonderful, you know, portraying that like bubbly ditz character, but you would always be aware that there was a sharp mind at work behind it, that it was in fact a performance. And so perhaps that was not something that the filmmakers wanted, which to me, I do think like I would have found it very satisfying to have, you know, that sort of awareness brought to that role. Which is, I don't know, would have been more satisfying for me. But anyway.
I don't know how relevant this is, but I read or heard somewhere that like the Coen brothers, when they cast specifically on appearance in a really, like, not only, right, but like they care so much about the way that somebody looks and wanting to fill that like particular visual style, right? And which is why they have a lot of really like I want to say kind of like strange or like just people who like have a very specific kind of look to them that's like memorable and like interesting, right? It's not cookie cutter.
I think one of the great examples of that, and he was a Coen brothers like stable, you know, one of in their stable of actors is John Polito, who shows up as the
brother
actual
Seamus.
Private Eye. Yeah, the Seamus, the dick, unlike you, in like the following him around in the little Volkswagen Beetle, Like John Polito was definitely one of those actors, wonderful character actors, who has such a distinct look to him that kind of fits him into like, that to me is like part of the great, like the Coen brothers are in a sense a throwback to the great Hollywood tradition of the era, the 40s, and and whatnot, when character actors were just like so much a part of the experience of going to films. Actors like Peter Lorre and Sidney Greenstreet and stuff in films like Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon. Like the Coen brothers know still how to deploy character actors, whereas today more and more it's like we don't like, I'm thinking about the Batman, the new the new Batman movie. It's like they cast. I mean, and I actually think Colin Farrell is really good as the Penguin in that film. But I also think, like, why cast Colin Farrell as the Penguin in this film?
Right.
Like, why not cast some character actor or something who actually kind of has like the look that you're going for and who can bring that quality to it? So, I feel like we're moving away, and have been for a long time, from just the great use of character actors. But that's Coen brothers.
I think that's so interesting because Robert Pattinson, Colin Farrell, Brad Pitt, to an extent, some of the things that folks have pointed out is that these are the type of people who have like leading man looks, but would be much more interesting and are often more interesting in these character actor roles. But then if you're giving those roles to these people who are like, traditionally attractive, where do the character actors go?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we have moved away from it. It's something that goes on in, what's his name? The Royal Tenenbaums guy, right? Like, he's someone who also will only move so far into casting interesting looking people and character actors. He much prefers, and this is someone who obviously is obsessed with the aesthetics, right? The look of a film. It's planned down to a minute level. So this is not, by accident, but this is someone who would prefer to hire conventionally attractive people and character actor them up rather than actually cast interesting looking people to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no transition. This conversation is also reminding me a little bit of how when animation casting directors started casting famous people as opposed to all of the amazing voice actors. And that was like a shift that happened in the 90s. And it just reminds me of that, right? Of just moving towards the big names as opposed to a wider swath of talent.
Like I saw it, why the fuck does Chris Pratt have to be the main voice in every fucking cartoon? And I mean, I saw a tweet not too long ago, and I think this is exactly right. Like it's because the studios, want those famous actors, those faces that people feel this connection with, to be able to do the promotional, everything on the talk shows and interviews and everything for the film, or that's at least part of it. But yeah, it doesn't actually make the film better to have, these, because voice acting is a different talent. It doesn't require a person to look a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. It's a shame.
There's a video. Lindsay Ellis. I don't know what else people can have their thoughts. Whatever. We're not going there. But Lindsay Ellis made a video about this particular thing. I forget what it's called. I'll link it in the show notes, but it starts with when Robin Williams was cast as the voice of the genie in Aladdin, and it all kind of went down from there. It's a very interesting video talking specifically about this.
Yeah. But to come back to the Big Lebowski, I do enjoy, like, even acknowledging all the troubling stuff that surrounds, say, the John Turturro character, Jesus. One thing I think this film does repeatedly is just introduce characters in this way that lends them this kind of exciting, mythic, larger than life energy. And so the whole early sequence with Jesus, where like that amazing like Spanish language version of Hotel California is playing, like, yes, I acknowledge all the problems with that character, but man, cinematically, like, there's something like exciting and seductive about that sequence. And similarly, like later in the film, you have Ben Gazzara as Jackie Treehorn. And like the way he like walks across the beach and like through darkness and then just emerges into the light and says like with the most like smooth LA power player confidence you can imagine, like, hello, dude, I'm Jackie Treehorn or whatever. It's like, again, this is just the Coen brothers know how to make like movies that make me want to do the Martin Scorsese, or the Bong Joon-ho. Like, to me, it's cinema quote. Like, it's just, it's like cinema. It's like, yes, you're leveraging just all the tools at your disposal to like elevate and make this more like electrifying and, interesting to watch and to hear. And so just like on an aesthetic level, on a tonal level, I really like this film. And I love in the final sequence, the final section of the film, there's this bit where you're in the bowling alley and it's like quiet. I think it's just after like Donnie has died, and there's like this man like pushing the thing, like cleaning the lanes, and you see the machines kind of spinning, and it's like in this film there's so much chaos just twirling everywhere. Everything is chaos and life is chaos, but then there's like the beautiful order of bowling at its center. Like I don't know. It's just it's fascinating to me. It's it's a film I definitely enjoy and appreciate more like on just an aesthetic level or as like an experience, cinematic experience. While definitely acknowledging that it's got a lot of outdated or even troubling then shit in it.
Yeah.
So.
According to the Wikipedia article, they pulled so many. The Coen brothers, when they wrote this, their inspirations were pulled from so many different people and like little bits from a lot of different sources, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, for example, one of the characters that one of them is based on actually was trying to find a car that was stolen and found an 8th grade report shoved in between the seats. Like, that's a real thing that happened, right? And so then that gets integrated into the story. That the Maud, the artist, is based on an artist who actually used to fly and fling paint, right? Like, and there's just like all these little details. And I feel like there's something, writers always pull from all kinds of sources in their life that they experience. But the sort of piecemeal of the movie feels like it makes a lot more sense and like fits the origin story of how it came together in some ways,
Right.
I love that idea that there are just weird, interesting characters around us, that absolutely absurd things arise out of the most banal of circumstances and environments, and the idea that like these incredible characters and like, Jeff Bridges' character, the dude, is based on a friend of the Coens, right? The idea that there is someone out there who is actually like that, I find wonderful.
And also the bowling alley, the people that this is based off of would play softball, and they're like, that's not good for our movie, so they made it a bowling alley because you can like sit and drink and talk and have conversations. But also they talked about how it is a very specific moment in like late 50s, early 60s Americana that is of its time, and really wanting to expose that or have that be a central like aesthetic to the film. So I thought like all the choices that filmmakers make are very deliberate and specific, and I think they're fascinating. And when it all comes together in something like this, where it feels so cohesive in its vision, I don't know. I find that exciting.
Yeah, more interesting movies, even if you don't ultimately like, if it's not your jam, but. Just an interesting movie where people are trying shit. Love it.
Yeah.
In the bonus, I might bring up a movie that is that I feel
that
weird
tries
about.
some shit, and maybe I'm interested to hear what that is.
And before we wrap up, I do want to say, like, so this film also, if you watched this film and you liked it, or you're interested in films like it, I want to also recommend a film, a Robert Altman film that is also like an LA private eye odyssey in which the central character that I think is very much like, I think this film is very much in the same tradition of in which the central character kind of is, being yanked along and is the one being played and things are totally out of his control. It's The Long Goodbye. It stars Elliot Gould as Philip Marlowe, but so in Philip Marlowe is a famous old.
Isn't this with Gina Davis too? Oh no, that's the Kiss Goodbye.
No, that's the last. That's the Long Kiss Goodnight.
Kiss Goodnight. Yeah, totally different movie.
Yeah. But The Long Goodbye, really great. Robert Altman, L.A. Odyssey. Elliot Gould is fantastic as Philip Marlowe. As it's clearly like doing a deconstruction of Marlowe as in the crime novels of the I think 30s and 40s where he originated. Very different kind of take on him as a more hapless loser type, just trying his best to make it as a PI in LA, and things are completely out of control. So really an entertaining film as well to maybe make as a companion piece with this one.
There were two moments when the dude really won me over in this film. The first was when he said fucking fascists to the cop. And the second was when he said he hated the Eagles. Yes. And I was like, yes, of course. We all do. The Eagles are the worst.
Man, can you change the song? Fucking Eagles.
Yep. I appreciated that. All right, y'all. We'll be right back. Hey, are you enjoying the show? If you are, we would love you to support us to keep making it. If you become one of our patrons, not only are you going to do that and allow us to keep making this every week, but also you get access to some perks like bonus episodes, participate in polls to determine future episodes, access to our Discord server, which is only available to patrons, and, other things. If you love us, help support us. You can do that at patreon.com/femfreak. What's your freak out? Now it's time to talk about what's been thrilling us, moving us, upsetting us, or infuriating us this past week. Carolyn, you got to freak out?
Yeah, I do. So last time I was on the show, I freaked out about a book that I had just read by noted lesbian novelist and nonfiction writer Sarah Schulman called The Gentrification of the Mind. And immediately after I read The Gentrification of the Mind, I read another book of hers that absolutely, blew me away. It's called Conflict is Not Abuse. And it is very difficult, actually, to sum up, neatly what this book is about. But, it's in a nutshell, it's about, I would say, how both, individuals, everything from individuals to, nation states and nations, individuals who are either, have internalized either supremacy ideology, say, white supremacy or whatever the form of supremacy is, or who have internalized trauma as part of their just narrative and part of, or they've been through trauma, will often in situations of conflict claim abuse when abuse is not happening. And so using it as actually, so the declaration of abuse then becomes a tool of by which people try to maintain power. So an example, I guess, just off the cuff in my own mind, might be the situation where the woman in Central Park, where Christian Cooper, the black man, asked her to not walk her dog in the bramble, and this woman started hyperventilating and acting as if her life was in danger, and rapidly started threatening to call the police. And her clear narrative was that his just presence there and his just asking her to not walk her dog in the bramble was abuse. But there was nothing abusive about it, not even close. And yet she could have used it to call the police, to involve the state, to, assert a narrative in which his mere presence there was abusive to her in a sense. And anyway, there's a whole amazing section on Israel and how Israel perpetuates a narrative of itself as, like just Palestinian resistance or the presence of Palestinians is a kind of abuse, which is obviously completely false and constructed, but is very, very effective in a lot of ways, just geopolitically. I won't say that I like agreed at every step of the way with everything that Schulman says in this book. There's definitely, it's a provocative book. It's at times a challenging book. But I do think it's like a really important book, and more than just important, like The Gentrification of the Mind, it's also just a very, very compelling read. Like it's not some dry academic text where she's just like laying these things out in some kind of clinical way and like stating her conclusions in dry terms. No, it's all drawn very vividly on like lived experience, lived research, and brought to life through like just in a very vivid and engaging way.
Yeah, I actually started reading it based on your suggestion, Carolyn, and I'm only read a tiny bit of it, but I was fascinated at like the nuance of the argument, and also how she, like you were saying, how she goes like her thesis applies both to individual and nation states and everything in between. That it's like it's very broad ranging point that she's trying to make that I think is really fascinating. So yeah. All right.
That's it.
Ebony, top that.
What was it Teen Witch that had the girl rapping and she was like, top that. Okay, y'all, this is not a fever dream. Somebody look it up on YouTube. I think it was Teen Witch. Anyway, my freak out was a Twitter thread that I actually saw this morning. This dude named John Frankensteiner on Twitter. And it was a selection of a bit of Orson Welles talking shit about other filmmakers. And it is... Oh,
I love Orson Welles talking shit about other filmmakers.
Oh my God. So I had never come across any of this. So just real quick, he opens the thread by sharing this conversation Orson Welles is having about Woody Allen. And he's saying he is arrogant. Like all people with timid personality. You know what? I'm not even going to read it because I'm not going to do justice to it. You have to imagine Orson Welles saying this. I mean, and this dude, by this point, like an elder statesman, considered an auteur, right? I love people who are unafraid to tell you exactly what they think, who have reached that point in their lives and in their careers where they are either unafraid of reprisals or there will be no reprisals. There's no point, right? The honesty, the transparency, the, unmasking of the king, the revealing that the king has no clothes, it's delectable. It is delicious. And he spares no one, it's Woody Allen. It's John Landis. He tells this great thing about how John Landis kept sending him notes on this film that he was doing. And he says that he phoned me to give me advice on the script the day he was indicted. Which is just amazing to me. Anyways, I think I shared, Anita, the link to the Twitter thread, but it is absolutely worth checking out. Orson Welles on
So this is interesting, right?
Huh?
Like, who does that today? I was thinking about...
That's the thing, no one does.
What's his name did the whole... what's his name did that whole thing about how Marvel movies aren't cinema or whatever?
Yeah. So we have Martin Scorsese, who refreshingly, says what he thinks about Marvel films. But
again, it takes the Scorsese, right? Like no one is.
Well, Orson Welles was that then, right?
Yeah, there's nothing you can do to Martin Scorsese, no matter how mad you get at him. Like Marvel, they can't affect his career, right? But it is a business decision for how many people feel this way about the filmmakers that are out there, even the people that, at whose altars we maybe currently worship. But you just can't say this kind of stuff. It's just refreshing to have someone have absolutely no holds bars, just not afraid to tell you. I think everything you think about these people is ridiculous. They're a bunch of fucking assholes. I tried to fight him at a party. He's full of shit. He's a bad actor. He's a bad director. Just chef's kiss, Orson Welles.
All right, my freak out is in honor of our 200th anniversary. I would like to recant. I don't know. So I feel like we've talked about this, right? Where sometimes you watch a movie or play a game and like you don't see it yet, or you don't get it, or you don't whatever, and then like you watch it again and you feel differently, or time makes you think about it. And so one of the problems with how quickly we need to form opinions is that, right? Is that like we're not letting things sink in the same way. And I was thinking about how, so we did an episode on the Old Guard, and that's the Greg Rucka comic book about immortals, kind of superhero-ish, but immortals, and
with Charlize Theron, right?
Yep. And I believe I said I didn't like it, and that I don't like Charlize Theron as like a strong female character, and that I think she's very flat in those roles, and blah blah blah. Something about this movie keeps like calling to me. And so I've watched it 2 more times. So I've watched it 3 times now. And I like, it's not like I'm like, this is amazing cinema, but there's something about it that really does it for me. And like the story and the like the torturedness and the like the questions it raises about like, what would you be like if you were alive for 12,000 years or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, you know, all of that. And what would you be like if you found out that you weren't going to die? Or what if you were alive for that long and then you're about to die? Like, what does that mean? Right. I like those questions are appealing to me. And I realized in rewatching it a bunch that I really like Charlize Theron in it. Like, I think she's really fucking great in it. And I was like, why this but not that, right? Like, why am I changing my mind? And I think some of it is that the cold stoicness makes logical sense to me because of who the character is in this world. It's not someone who's like 30 and has seen some shit and is now like cold or whatever. It's someone who's like 5 bajillion years old and has seen everything. And there's a line in the movie where one of the other characters says about her that like she has forgotten more ways to fight than armies will ever learn. And like, I don't know. And so anyways, I feel like I have come to anew on her and in this movie. And I think the fight scenes are fucking amazing. Like, I really like the fight choreography in it. And I think she, like, to be able to embody someone who is so skilled and so smooth, I think, in the way that she does is really a testament to her skills. So on this 200th episode,
you're gonna make me rewatch The Old Guard, which I did like, you know, on I've only seen it the one time, although I really was so disturbed by the idea that her lover from before, correct me if I'm wrong, had been like consigned to like a stone coffin or something at the bottom of the ocean. And so like she dies over and over again over the course of like 5,000 years. That like fucked with my spirit.
That's like one of the most horrifying things one can imagine.
And I'm a little bit worried about if they do make a second one that like she's probably the main villain in it, because they have the little cameo, the like post-credit scene with her. And like, that's one of those things too, where I'm like, oh no, like, crazy woman, whatever, but also like justified.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, in this way that is like, so how do you portray that? What does that look like? I mean, it's a choice to even have had that, but I don't know. So I've been thinking about that a lot. Like, I've been rewatching movies that I didn't necessarily like before, or just watching things that I probably wouldn't have gravitated towards and I don't know, just trying to find more in them than I would. And it's been an interesting experience.
Right on.
Yeah. All right.
Good for you.
All right.
Thanks, friend. All right, Ebony and Carolyn, do you want to plug anything? You want to tell people where you live now that you're guests formally?
Where we live? Yes. So
like live
mail
digitally.
Can be addressed too. Listen, y'all, I'm at the same place I always am, at Ebony Aster on Twitter. Actually, I'm there a lot less frequently now because I am one of those people that's just constantly on TikTok. I don't post there whatsoever.
Oh, really?
It's ridiculous how much I'm on there, either looking at pictures of kittens or, you know what, I'm not even going to tell you.
I don't go on TikTok because I was on it for like 2 weeks during the pandemic, and then I was like, fuck this. And then now it's like a trash dump, and my algorithms are so like fat phobic and just awful.
Ooh.
So Ebony, will you send me a curated, like, just send me the highlights?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a lot like my Twitter feed, right? So it's probably the people I follow are probably 90% Black creators. So I think that helps my algorithm, right? Like I miss a lot of the other bullshit. But yeah, absolutely. Because there's some people on that app, talented.
Yeah, cool. Mm-hmm. Carolyn?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm Carolyn at Carolyn Michelle on Twitter. That's probably, and I tweet way too much now. Like, I have only become more absorbed in Twitter, partially because, like, for my current job, I feel like I kind of have to keep, a lot of maybe stories break, news breaks. Just I have to be aware of the cultural conversations that are happening on Twitter. So but it's definitely become even more, something that I'm addicted to lately, which is not great, and I'm conscious of that. I'm trying to kind of mitigate that to some degree. I mean, I work for Kotaku.com. I'm a managing editor. I don't put up much writing of my own because I'm very busy being a managing editor. But, I do think that of late we've been doing some really great reporting. I'm very proud of some of the reporting some of our writers have been doing on things like labor and unionization struggles in the industry, things like the Activision Blizzard lawsuit. We've had some really interesting reporting lately on Nintendo. I'm just very proud of the work that we do in that regard to kind of shine a light on some things that are really happening in the industry. So I encourage folks to. I'm not saying whatever. I encourage folks to visit Kotaku.com from time to time. Give us a read.
Awesome. Cool. Well, our show is engineered by Rob Parak. Carrie Stimson provides technical support, artwork by Jamie Varon, and our intro music is by Phil Circus. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.